So tell me, how have you been? How's things been the last week or so?
Yeah,
It's a stupid question, really. What I'm really interested in is how much triggering has been happening.
okay, right, specifically that's the question. Okay, that's good to get the specifics, yeah. Um, let's see. Well, the thing I was going to bring is um I have like a maybe it's an anxiety thing that goes on. I've got chronic fatigue, so whatever that is, but um perhaps nervous system dysregulation is a label for it. Um, I had an illness 20 years ago and it messed with my digestion, it messed with my sleep, and I think that on top of other things maybe has caused my nervous system to be a bit over, like my baseline is a bit like I'm already. I don't know. It's one way of thinking about it that I'm already kind of nervy or something.
Yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah, yeah. Now,
Yeah.
I suggest that you start to reframe the way you put these things
Okay.
to be more accurate, right?
Okay.
And when you say, I've got this and it's my nervous system, and there are these reasons why it is the case that I've got them. It's like you are confirming for yourself that you own them and that
Okay.
uh, they somehow dominate the system. Now, all that may be accurate, but it's irrelevant, right? The reality is that those things happen, and if you look at them in detail, you'll find that when what your experience of it today is very likely, well, it has to be somewhat different, although it might be a subtle difference to what it was yesterday or what it will be
Right.
tomorrow or what it was last week. So if you, for example, you wake up and you've had a restless sleep or whatever, and you don't get much value out of your sleep and you're tired, you're going to be more susceptible to that kind of thing. Right?
Yeah.
If you get a flu, or a cold, you're going to be more susceptible. If you go out and do a lot of physical exercise, if you're feeling good enough to do that, you're going to be more susceptible because you're exhausted. So what we want to do is acknowledge the variations when this happens, and so call it a happening
Okay.
rather than say it is me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that's going to take a little bit of practice for that to be automatically the case, but it will loosen the identification with it, and that's the big aspect of it.
Got you.
Yeah. So sorry for interrupting you, but
No, it's important. Yeah, it's
yeah,
good.
it is valuable. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Language conditions us
Yeah.
amazingly.
Right.
It's really hard to overstate how much it does.
Right. Right. Mhm. Yeah, I do sometimes wonder how much of this, because I've had it. It's been happening for many years, and yet,
Good pickup and correction. Yeah. Yeah.
and yet, my life is so different now to how it was 20 years ago. My days, whatever is in the system. And so I do suspect that there is just some kind of groove that's been created in
Absolutely.
my,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yep. And then what we do is we interrupt that groove, right, suggesting that today it can appear to be a lot deeper than what it was yesterday, or less deep than what it was
right,
yesterday, etc. Yeah,
right, yeah,
good stuff. Yeah, yeah. It's really crazy that a really good story is that the brain doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and what it experiences, it experiences what you imagine. So
Right.
you can certainly make things happen. So then you start to think, what about the possibility of this not being there anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you know the mind will run along with all sorts of things because it's got really comfortable with the fact that you've got this stuff. It finds it very useful to have this stuff. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it allows you to shape your life in the way that seems to suit. Um, so essentially, what you do is you start to think differently, and you interrupt a lot of those old patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And so you develop new neuronal pathways in the brain. That's a great story. But that's what happens. And the old ones, well, they don't actually go away, but they weaken. They become less insistent on being used.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, makes sense,
You
yeah.
never know what tomorrow brings. Never.
Right, and the crazy thing is that this stuff that seems so embedded, there've been occasions which I like to remember, where I've gone somewhere completely different for a fortnight,
Yes.
completely different daily life, different people around me, and it's just gone.
Yep.
Like, just
Isn't that
gone.
amazing? Isn't it? And curiosity's got to be piqued by that one. You know, there you go.
Yeah,
It can happen. So
yeah,
that's a huge thing that you've been shown in your experience that it can
yeah,
happen. No
yeah,
explanation. We don't need to explain it. It's just amazing that it can. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, right. Yes, I have to keep remembering that. It's useful to keep remembering that. Yeah, and equally, like evenings, generally, I feel tired and don't do much. But if there's something I really want to do, and it's I've got stories maybe about what it is about those things, but I can go and I'll just go to the early hours of the morning and I won't feel a flicker of tiredness.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And again, amazing stuff.
Yeah,
How this
yeah,
can happen. You know, the mysteries of the organism are just profound. Yeah. Love it. Yeah.
yeah,
And you don't need to explain it. You can say it's
right,
brilliant that it's a mystery, you know, because you can say you
yeah,
can go see as soon as you explain it, you start to put another groove down to go along. Well, when it's a
that's right,
mystery, it can be anything. It's
that's
great.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'm limiting it, aren't I? If I give it
Yep.
if I really describe it in some particular way. Yeah. So what I was going to say is that the thing that happens to me these days that kind of troubles me is feels like I have some kind of it's almost like a jangling um, tremor in my nervous system. Perhaps it feels internal, and particularly if I go certain things like I quite often have a nap, or if I go to bed, I get it because I've had trouble with sleep, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of. I mean, again, I can find a story as to why it happens, but it just seems so weird, and I don't know whether it's a physiological thing or an emotional thing or a combination of things or whatever.
You don't have to. Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like anxiety, and so I've tried all kinds of things. I've tried just completely being with it and just really trying to allow it and just notice it and stay in the body and stay out of the thoughts and
No, no, no,
that's
no. You haven't. You haven't. That's a really good trick. Yeah. You say you've tried those things. And what you didn't say, but I took in what you said, was I've tried those things to get rid of it, to fix it.
well, I've tried to do the not trying to fix it as well, But I suppose somewhere in the back of the mind, it's always there. I want this to go
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. So here's a koan for you, a lovely koan. How do you do not doing?
Hmm.
I'll
Yeah,
you take that one away with you and play with it. Okay. Another thought that comes to mind that I suggest that might be valuable for you is that every night when you go to sleep or any time when you take a nap, there is a period where you're going off to sleep, which is a the hypnotist in me, it just loves that moment, that period of time. That's that kind of 15 minutes of semi-consciousness. And
Hmm.
it's a very, very valuable time. And you can set a whole lot of things if
Hmm.
it, if it occurs to you to think about not thinking, to think about possibilities, to think about everything is a mystery, to think about who knows what's going to happen or what can happen in the future.
Hmm.
That what that does is opens up things. Whereas the old way, where you normally go to sleep, you'll find that you'll be having little fantasies about things being the way they've always been.
Hmm.
So just changing that to opening it up to possibilities of any kind, but obviously you imagine much more pleasant times. It's very powerful. You do
Okay.
hypnotize yourself in those times when you're going off to sleep.
Okay.
And the same when you're waking up as well, but it's a little bit harder to control that part,
Hmm. Interesting.
to remember. Thoughts don't appear to do that quite so easily, but you can train yourself so that when
Hmm.
you're waking up, you're also doing that, because you'll realize that you're kind of awake before you're awake.
Hmm.
You're awake, but you're not. Your body's kind of lagging, and you're not really into moving or actually opening your eyes even at that stage. Well, that's as
Okay.
soon as you realize that that's what's happening, get into that again, that fantasy of anything could happen.
Hmm.
Mm. Things that I
Nice.
haven't yet experienced could come along.
Hmm.
I could be extremely happy and contented and so on. Just imagine it. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
So what you know, and we can look at the word know as well, but we won't right now. So it's just a way of a word, language we're using. What you know is your interpretation of what you experience. And if you describe that, but at the same time as being really aware of stories you add to that description, and those stories will almost always be about what it means.
Mm.
I am feeling such and such. Oh, and that means something. Well, that's when you're off into fantasy land. That's not helpful. Right?
Okay.
So stay with just the description of what you experience and then be objective. Recognize that the moment you use a label, and you will, especially if you're communicating to people, and in fact, if you're communicating to somebody, you can't not use labels. But for yourself, you can recognize that that label is a really superficial level of description, that underneath that label, where words don't cut it, is the experience of what you're actually experiencing, is the recognition of what. And even that's not right, because you're not really recognizing something clearly. What you're recognizing is getting much, much less clear. It is, oh, yeah, there's this feeling, and oh, I can't quite locate where it is, but it's kind of in that area, and it's moving, but I can't quite see where it's moving to or
Mm.
how it's moving. It's growing, it's shrinking, it's hot, it's cold, but not quite, you know, it's a
Oh yeah.
weird feeling. It can be hot and cold at the same time. You think, wow, how can I explain that? Not possible.
Uh-huh. Rather than jumping to my what I
Yeah,
assume it to be because
the
it's similar
narrative
to
is
something
always
else I've had
superficial.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, man.
Mm.
Yeah. Thanks.
And can you see that that opens you up to a whole potential of new experiencing?
Hmm.
all of a sudden you're seeing the world at a different level.
Yeah.
Your world's actually expanding.
Hmm. It's like becoming more detailed, I guess.
Mm. Fuller. Yeah.
Yeah. Richer. Yeah. And I guess I'm staying with the actual, well, the idea is, I guess, that I'm actually experiencing rather than keeping going to just mental descriptions of what I assume it
Absolutely.
to be
Yeah,
if
yeah,
it's similar to something else I've had us.
yeah. And I put this in quotes, but the magic is down there beneath the level of labels. That's where
Hmm.
you start to experience awe about what's happening. Oh, it's can't be spoken about. Yeah. So anytime you experience something and along comes an appendage to that experience that says, I don't want to experience this, it's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant, it's usually that you say you don't want to experience. Recognize that that itself, add a story to it that says that itself is there to help you, and it's there to help you avoid something.
Hmm.
It's there to help you divert away from something that's going on. And definitely it's if you see that's happening, be okay with it. It's not it's not that we need to stop that happening. What we need to do, what we want to do, what we want to happen is that you recognize what triggered it to be there.
Okay.
And now that could be some circumstances in your quote quote external environment, or it could be a thought. It could be an image that comes to mind as a thought, or a narrative that comes to mind as a thought, or it could be that something really that you would never imagine. You notice it might be the color of somebody's shirt, could be, or the any little thing that kind of triggers some distant memory that's not even a memory in your head anymore, but rather a memory that your body's got. Some association could be the
Yeah.
trigger, or it could be something a lot more obvious as well. But it's what gets triggered, and what gets triggered is what's already in you. It's never about what seems to be the trigger. It's what triggers the trigger. That's a good way to put it. And
Yeah.
so the trigger is that you suddenly, if you work backwards, suddenly you find that your off-end thought will be the common one, and that thought is, oh God, I don't want to be feeling this, or it's got to be something
Hmm.
along those lines, or it's an outward directed thing. They've caused me. That caused me. Bop bop bop, kind of thing. But it didn't. It just was just the trigger for something that was already embedded in there.
Right.
Yeah. So the idea of chasing whatever, is futile. It's never going to get you anywhere. If it's an idea and it stays an idea, it's always escape. And so at this stage, you go straight to what you're feeling and involve yourself in the detail, get underneath the labels about what you're feeling. And then by invitation, you might get shown what it's about or might not. It doesn't matter. But that's the quickest way out of what it is
Mm,
because it's not the intention to get out of it.
mm.
Chasing things means that they just run faster. You never catch them.
So see it as an opportunity to possibly understand something
Good,
rather
you've got
than,
it. Beautiful. Well put. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And whether you do or don't see, it doesn't matter. Right? You're developing the skill of looking.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Also, when you have an opinion about something, for example, you don't want this to be here, you are selfing. So mm, there is an energetic contraction instead of just an openness.
Yeah.
Um, so just recognize that if you have some kind of opinion, a resistance towards experience, and um, what can happen when you become aware of that is that you just relax instead of
Mm,
um, going into the experience. I find it like I do agree with what Vince says. At the same time, I also find it sometimes that there is a tendency to do or kind of create a doer energy by investigating those things. And sometimes it's just about relaxing the whole experience. So you're not going to thought to, run away from it, but you're also not going into the experience to kind of inquire into it. You're just
mhm,
open and the sensations are there. That's fine. But you're also not kind of diving in and you're also not running away from it.
so that makes me think again what Vince said, how it's kind of how to do not doing. Is that kind of what we're on this knife edge of
Yeah.
trying to do not doing?
I was thinking of that too. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a trick, isn't it? So when Marius was saying about relaxing, he wasn't saying make yourself relax.
Mhm,
He was saying if relaxing happens, that's good, kind
yeah.
of thing. It's very complex, isn't it?
It can happen if there is awareness of this contraction. So by me mentioning it now, maybe this will pop into your head later, where you're kind of aware of not wanting it to be there, and then the relaxing can happen or not.
Yeah. And even there's no he's not saying you have to do being aware. And so it all happens or not. So the way I
Mhm,
see it, and you've heard me repeat this again and again, essentially it's like we're just casting out seeds, and some will germinate and some won't, and the ones that
mhm,
don't, we'll just cast them out again, and we'll keep doing it until they germinate. So the whole thing is allowing. So
mhm,
there's a kind of and again you can't do it, but if you recognize that from these conversations seeds do get planted and the
mhm,
possibility of a thought appearing that says relaxing, oh okay, and then it happens, It's amazing the power of simply seeing. When seeing happens, things change.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when I say the word relaxing to you, I become aware that I took a breath and my body relaxed. And I'm talking to you about relaxing and I'm relaxing. Wow,
Mhm.
how does that happen?
Mhm.
Shafigh, been triggered recently?
Been triggered recently. Yeah, I do. Um, but the difference is that the judgment is not there, or it happens and goes so much quicker than before. And also not trying to do anything for it. And just the kind of a inquiry happens by itself. Just like look at, okay, what am I taking as self? Why I'm getting offended, or what's triggering this? What are the thoughts that are happening? And yeah, but yeah, triggering happens. Yeah, I still get triggered.
Mm.
Yeah.
What's your, do you have an opinion about getting triggered? What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I see the thoughts that are coming that are saying that this is not good. I'm kind of not progressing in a way, but I just see them as thoughts and I don't give them that much value, really. I
Yeah.
just like I just see them fighting in a way with each other. The whole the whole thought domain is very kind of interesting and been very challenging for me. And that's the part that also gets me excited whenever I find something out about them, just like see them through some, like last night I was listening. You have a clip of Paul on your YouTube channel that he talks to Diana, I think,
Yep.
that he goes explaining like what's the realization. And I was listening to that for the second time, and something clicked that I don't know why it clicked. I heard it before, but something that Paul said, that thoughts are just announcement. They're just like speaking. They are not actually figuring things out. And it hit me in a way that like I always imagine that the conversation in my mind that is happening, that is thinking, that is figuring things out, that is important. And now I have to listen to them because they are telling me things that are important and have value. They are about me. I need to keep them in my mind because they are planning the future, or just like telling me about things about the past, or there is value in, in them. And then when I heard that, I was like, yeah, why? Why did I think like that? Why I thought they know something. There's value in them.
Yeah.
Why I thought like uh, they don't know anything. Like my definition of thinking or figuring things out happening quietly. I don't know why or when or how they are happening, but it's not this conversation that is happening. And that was a huge shift. It was just like a big burden was lifted out of my shoulder because I realized I don't have to listen to them. There is there
Yeah.
is no value in just like paying attention to them, and they don't know anything. They're not figuring things out, and it was huge. It was so much excitement when it happened.
Oh, there's so much excitement here that it happened for you. That was great. I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. That was really, really great, and just like open things up, as I said, like the energetically, and also I found it also very interesting that whenever a question comes up, I try to talk it almost to myself, to just like say it in those voices as like I'm listening to those and something that I need to listen to them, listen in those conversations. Also, I was expecting to receive the answer in the same conversation that is happening, listening from them. And that was also another kind of my kind of hesitation and indecision, in a way that I was looking for this resolution from this loop that is happening.
Mm,
So, for example, when I was faced with a choice or decision to make, I was just waiting, listening to this thought, listening to the conversation happening, and they were going loop and loop and loop, and I was waiting for them to get to a conclusion. And I realized I don't need to.
mm.
Why am I waiting? The choice is already clear, is made. If it's not clear, then it hasn't been made. But I don't need to listen to them. I don't need to wait for them to happening.
That's great. Yeah. That's huge. It's like it's hard to overstate the value of that. That's you letting go of doing.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
it's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you can describe where you move to out of that as trusting the recognition that things just happen and that they'll be okay. It's just beautiful. What a wonderful experience. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I got as excited as I imagine you were. That was really great. Yeah,
That was really, really great. I mean, I felt the shift, the energetic shift in my whole body. I, like a big portion of me became kind of deprecated in a way. It's just like, I don't need to do anything. I don't need to pay attention to them. I can just like do whatever, or just like opened up. But I found also this opens up to go in my body.
yep,
That was also a very good kind of a conjunction to the thing that we talked about last session, that just opened up because I'm not in my head. I don't need to pay attention to them. So what's left? Okay, what's happening in my body? And I realize my attention goes to my body more and more, that I don't need to pay attention to the mind.
yep, yep, yep. And and the release of how much energy used to get tied up in that stuff is phenomenal. Yeah, yeah. And Paul didn't even know how brilliant he was being when he said those things. He just opened his mouth and out it came.
Yeah, that was brilliant. I think the way that he kind of used these different metaphors and using different like analogy, the role of the language and different kind of brain. And I don't know like why something clicks sometime, and because I listened to that clip before, but it didn't click. But this time for some reason I heard it actually.
Yeah, yep. I have a story that says you weren't ready before and now you were. Yeah, there were other circumstances, other things had realigned that made all this appropriate. Yeah. So yeah, we can hear. I mean, we can hear things again and again and again, and nothing happens, and then one day, boom, it happens. What? What? How can it? I knew that. How come it changed me this time? Yeah, yeah,
And we don't know which one actually was effective in a way, because they are not linear, like not something that I did exactly 2 days ago led to something yesterday.
yes,
And
yeah,
they are just like going, I don't know in what way, but
It's like a
It's just
rapid
like,
accumulation rather
yeah,
than, yeah, you say, yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, I'm very excited, very happy, very energetically free.
Mm. And even though, and I'm not certainly not meaning to dampen anything here, but you may find that the old way will intrude from time to time. But the moment you see it, it'll be gone because the foundations have been cut out from underneath it now, and they will appear because they get triggered and they haven't been triggered before. You know, they're little remnants that are left around that simply they appear because of the old habit, but not because there's any real cause of them. The only cause is in their triggering kind of thing. But the moment they happen, you'll see them, they'll dissipate and won't come back. So if you do experience some of the old ways coming back, it has no legs anymore. It'll be gone pretty easily. Yeah. And I know that because you describe that energetic bodily experience of it. That's a shift. That's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually happened this morning when I was talking to someone and said something, and then I felt like the sense of the trigger that you were talking about. I felt the trigger, and then it just took me a couple of seconds to realize, oh, this is again the mental chatter that's happening. I don't need to pay attention to them, and then came back, and then just like passed.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, isn't it great? Lovely.
It's
Mm.
great. I'm so grateful.
Think about all of that energy wasted that when we used to like try to remember a thought or just like, what was that person's name from fifth grade? It's just so silly to think any of that, you know. I remember my mom used to tell me when I was little, you know, when I forgot something, she was like, well, if it's important, you'll remember. And then only recently have I like really, I don't even think she understood. And it's like, yeah, I guess if it's meant to happen, it'll happen. I don't remember need to remember anything, you know.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that, you know.
Yeah, weird stuff. Yeah, I had an experience yesterday where I was talking to somebody and I started to say something and I said one word about what I was going to with what I was going to say, and then I forgot what I was going to say. It was so not there halfway through the sentence. God, couldn't believe it. But I know from experience that if I chase it, I can chase it for the next half an hour and I won't get it. So I just drop it and move on, and then it'll come back or not. Yeah, usually it
Yeah,
does. Yeah, it's just amazing how the brain works. You know, is it the brain? I don't know how things happen or
thought
don't happen.
freeway.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's amusing. I find it quite amusing, you know. I mean, the old way would be to apologize for it, you know, and now I just go, God, isn't it hilarious?
Yeah.
It's a bit, it's enticing to hear a description of that happening, Shafigh, for those who are still seeking. They want some of that. Well, actually, they don't have to be seeking. Yeah, I'd like some of that. That was a great feeling. That would be good. Yeah. So but the trick is, of course, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and it means nothing about anything. Uh, we can easily add a story to it that it means that you have shifted somewhere and that that's a good thing. They're just stories we add to the whole experience. Yeah. But for those who are still seeking to imagine that not having that experience means something, that's a trap.
I know what happens here when I ignore most of the thoughts. I still kind of catch on, but it doesn't take long to figure out that I was in thought. But when I get real relaxed, not only do I see like just a normal thought parade, there are like I see like old dreams, nighttime dreams, like come up, that I've had for years or whatnot. Like those things will happen and pass by. And I used to get seduced by those, because in my waking life, I'd be like, I remember at one point saying, and I didn't really know the truth of this, saying like, how do you know which one's real? The nighttime dream? Because see, they seem just as real as this. And I didn't realize like the truth and all that at the time, but I used to just like, oh, I like the dreamland better. So I would think about my nighttime dreams a lot, like, ooh, what a different world. That's pretty cool. And wow, I like that because I've never seen those people in this life. I don't know who those people are in those dreams. And so I would get caught in another mind thing by going to those thoughts. And so now I think they try to seduce me again, like, oh, what about these? But it's all just the same thought.
Mm,
It's so I used to at one point get seduced by those,
yep.
thinking it was like a alternate reality, like, ooh, cool. And now it's just like, tricky little bastards. You're trying to get me up on the other side,
Yep. Yep.
How about these thoughts? Let's daydream about that.
Yeah. When we get past the point where we recognize that a lot of the old socially conditioned thinking uh, is the cause of our suffering. When we get past having to believe them, the experience that Shafigh just had, we can move into a point where we start to see much more subtle thoughts that are there, and they're not narrative, they're not words or textual. They can be little movies that happen, and we'll start to get it, and they happen in an instant. They're like a blip, like a flash on a camera goes off, that fast, and it's a whole movie in that. And
Yeah.
I often become aware of a movie, and I see myself making a cup of coffee, for example, and it just goes flash, boom, and I go, oh, okay. Whereas before, I'd just be making the coffee and not realize, that was involved in that kind of thing. So we can have those really, and they like nighttime dreams. They have that same feeling about a nighttime dream, but it's just another thought, a way of. But see, we often, when we start off, we think all thoughts are a narrative, that they're all either voices or text running around in our head, when in fact we often have audible thoughts or visual thoughts as well. And we don't know because they tend to happen really fast. I do remember as a kid escaping into books a lot. And at one point I can remember, this is really weird memory, I can remember walking home from school, and I used to walk and read at the same time. It was about a mile I walked from school to home. And I remember reading as I walked. I could walk and read quite okay. I knew where I was going. I didn't bump into anybody or anything like that. And I read. And I remember having the thought that the world in my head is so much better than the actual world. It was a brilliant escape, because the real world was pretty horrible to me, it was unpleasant. Yeah. But the one in my head, oh, that was great. I was Robin Hood and all those things, I was anybody I wanted to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my compassion to thoughts, because at some point they were helpful to me.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, they always have good intentions. They're just very unskillful. Mm.
The thing you also mentioned about the seeking the experience, uh, just I remember that like last 2 days, I've been in a experience of kind of a, I don't know, call it giving up or just like realizing there is nothing I can do to actually to move this or do a progress, or like I can't do anything and I can't not do anything. And I found myself like listening to something or watching something or reading something in order to move forward, in order to get something, to realize something. And I was just like reached the point that realized there is absolutely nothing. The thing that I imagined were helpful, they were not helpful at all. And I just like got to the point of exhaustion, and I just stopped reading or listening or whatever for 2 days, and not doing anything with any purpose or any getting something out of this. And but for some reason, this clip that I listened before, it was a genuine, in a way, it just was curiosity. Just like I thought like there is something interesting in it, and I didn't expect to get anything. I think that's probably just like a state of relax that I was listening to it without actually engaging with my mind. I was just like listening in the background to it and doing something else. And then that actual conversation hit something.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah. Something that may be useful is a thought story that any idea of progress, right, is like moving from here to there, somewhere in the future, is actually going to take you away from what you're looking for, because what you're looking for is right where you are. You're just not aware of it if you're looking for it. So the idea of progress is the antithesis of finding what you're standing on. It's like you're standing on a bar of gold, but you're looking for gold somewhere. Where is it? Where is it? You know, but you're standing on it. You just got to realize that. Yeah.
That like when you're looking for your glasses, but you're wearing them.
Yeah.
Done that before. Or yeah, sunglasses and they're on your head. I've actually looked for my phone while I was on my phone.
Yeah, we've all done that, I'm sure. Yeah, it's crazy. We don't need to find an explanation for it, and especially an explanation that says there's something wrong.
Mm.
Just weird the way it happens. It's just no explaining. It's just amazing how it can happen. Anything is possible. The good one I sometimes use is, how is it possible that you can feel hot and cold at the same time?
Mm.
But you can.
Yeah, happy and sad at the same time. So, yeah.
Yeah. Can't be explained, but it can be experienced. How's things in that busy world of yours, Maya?
Going on at the same time, but you would say I'm in a good place now. I have the feeling that everything's falling apart and we have to move or we don't have to move. And it feels so, first, it feels good to be in the group. I had the feeling whole day I needed someone to listen to me and not to judge. I feel quieter now. It's really busy. I'm really stressed, and I can sit here just letting this buzzy feeling be in me, which is somehow good. But the moving thing, I can see how attached I've become to this house where we live now. So as happy as I was months ago when I thought, oh, we will have to move, and I was looking for some other place. But now, when it really has to happen, I'm totally panicked. Living here, I don't know. I like it here so much. It's like, I don't know, it's like dying. I cannot imagine that I have to move, that I won't be here. Well, that's attachment.
Mm. Yeah, tricky one, isn't it? So, just to play around with that a little, wherever you move to, it will be here
Yeah.
when you're there. So, is there an idea that that here won't be as pleasant as this here?
Yes. Yes. That won't be as warm as here. That it won't be as quiet as here.
But
That there won't be as much spaces here. There won't be a garden.
are they all imaginings?
Yes.
It's interesting you
And
have those imaginings and not that it will be warmer and bigger and better garden or anything. But no, you have the idea that it'll be something taken off you.
yeah,
Someone's involved. Yeah. Yeah.
because moving to London, you have to have a lot of money to have all those things I mentioned.
Right.
We are outside now and it's nice. It's really nice. But on the other hand, maybe we won't have to move because we're not so far away. My daughter might be able to commute every day. I commuted 1 hour every day to school, so both ways. It's not unthinkable.
Mm.
So if we don't find anything that we really, really like, we won't move.
So that sounds perfect. Or
Actually, yes.
maybe not perfect, but pretty close to perfect.
Yeah.
So maybe the discomfort of commuting for your daughter is way more acceptable than the discomfort of living somewhere that doesn't feel good.
Yeah, yeah, and it will be like that. On the other hand, my husband, he works from home, and he's home all days. I think he would enjoy to go to live in the city. And I am so busy, I'm traveling all the time. So now there's a problem. When I'm at home, we have different needs now. He wants to go out, and I want to just stay at home.
So if you're in the city, he could go out all the time and have
Yeah,
coffee or whatever, and then when you're home, he'd be happy to stay home.
I think so, yes.
Wow,
Yeah,
so it could be either way, could work out really well, couldn't it?
yeah. And I'm somehow close to letting everything go. To I know there's nothing I can do, that something will be, and there's no point in being upset about anything.
Yep, yep, yep. I would like you to focus on that. I feel like I am really close to something happening, letting go, called letting.
Mm,
Isn't it weird that you can have that feeling? I very much can identify with that feeling. I called it on the verge. I was right close to the edge of something happening, and I knew it before. Where did it come from? I have no idea where it come from, but I knew it. I knew when I was going to wake up that I was going to wake up. It took a year, but that's nothing. That's only 3 seconds a year, you know. So, but I knew it was going to happen, and I have no idea where that feeling came from or how it could possibly be. No logic can explain it. Yet it was a strong feeling for me. And you have that feeling now. I know I am close to maybe experiencing my version of what Shafigh just talked about. You know, that wow, yeah, it's a sigh. Shoulders drop, relaxation happens. Yeah.
yeah, this is what I want. This is what I want. To completely let go of everything. To don't care about anything. This is what I want.
Mm. So
But
yeah,
as soon as you started to speak, I had a thought. No, no, I was here so many times.
Yeah. And you smile, so you can see the humor in that one.
Yeah, but I'm different. I'm different. A year ago, in this situation, I would go crazy completely. But now, okay, it
Mm.
is. It is hard. It's. I mean, those sensations are strong. There is a lot to work with. Lots of sensations in the body. So strong emotions, a lot of work for me to see or not to see, whatever. But now I can. I can handle it,
Mm.
at least partially, let's say.
So you recognize that something has changed.
Yes, yes, yes.
Seems like just a few words, something has changed, but that's a really big deal, isn't it? And it opens up the possibility. It recognizes the possibility of further change.
Mm. I won't say even hopefully. I don't know. I don't know.
Oh well, hopeful is kind of pleasant, but
Yeah.
unnecessary. Yeah.
As you say, it will be or it won't be. And that's it.
Yeah. You know it, you just have to feel it.
Yeah.
I love the word grok. Yeah, that really says something that description defies. Yeah, defies description. That's what happened to Shafigh. That was a grokking. Yeah.
I wait for this grog to hit me on the head. I'm just waiting.
Uh, if it'll hit you on the head and knock your thoughts all asunder, and it'll rock your body and whoo. Yeah.
Probably from behind.
Yeah, well, that's right. It would usually be unexpected too. Yeah.
Mm.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about feeling two things at once, and it's like I remember one time moving when I moved from one state to the next, and I mean it was a pretty far distance, but I remember leaving someone I really cared about a whole lot and being so sad and crying on the way, being so sad, but feeling so much hope and love for what was coming and doing that. So I feel like with whatever wherever you move, my like the funny thing is like there will be both of those, happy, sad, nervousness, and excitement. It's all like the same thing. It's, good or bad. It's all the label, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I just know like I feel like I've been in that situation before of move and not knowing where to move, and I'm in a little bit of a situation like that now, and the only thing I've learned is like come back to now, come back to now, and when it's time, the body will start acting and planning. But if I start to try to make a decision and does it feel right, then I'm like, nope, not now. And then it ends up happening, and then I still feel the feelings. I'm not trying to get away from the feelings,
Yeah.
but I just try to follow that guide that says, nope, I'm trying to do something that's not done already or whatever, because since we really don't have control,
Mm.
anything is just like that letting go. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I think the mind is trying to speak now, but I think maybe you might understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think I do.
The fine line of like, seems like it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, society tells us
Mm.
that if we feel bad more than we feel good, then we're feeling bad.
Yeah.
And it might be 49, 52%, So if we're feeling
Yeah.
52%, then we go, oh, it's bad. So we dismiss the good and feel bad. Whereas if we accept that we can feel good and bad at the same time, then we can be much more attuned to the shifting balance. And then what we find is that even though we're in the midst of seeing the bad, the good pokes its head through, and then we got 52-49 rather than 49-52 and so on. And then eventually, who knows what might happen, that the bad might just bleed away and not be there at all. Or who
And
knows?
you realize that they're the same.
Yeah, yes, exactly. They're
Yeah,
just,
but like I know I've had that to where I've had I just sat there in the sensation and the body would label it bad or anxious. And then I've said again where the body would label it, ooh, this is good, this is exciting. And it's the exact same sensation.
absolutely, yes.
The
Yeah,
label and the story overlay says something different.
yep,
It's just, yeah, it's really strange. I don't remember that all the time, but I try, I
yeah.
do know it's that.
It is the story that gives it meaning that determines whether it's good or bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Yeah, as you say, excitement and fear are the same sensation.
I can play it with it now because I have this feeling, this sensation of anxiety, and I can really imagine it's just excitement. It fits.
Hmm.
It's really just a story what I make out of it.
And you need to be a bit careful that that doesn't invite you to manipulate, to try and have one or the other. It is all just a giant question mark. Yeah.
But yeah, Maya, you talking about that, it did create that sensation or whatever was here. It brought that up here because I know that feeling all too well. And it's like nice to kind of feel it, whatever needed to be felt here. So thank you.
The thing is, the last time I moved 6 years ago across Europe, I was so happy. I was so happy to leave Croatia, but I never left again.
So Vince, you just said something to Maya about watching out that it doesn't turn into manipulation or something like that. So that, those kind of statements seem to imply that we get back to that knife edge of doership thing, as if, wouldn't it just be that manipulation happens or doesn't happen? I mean, I spend a lot of time in contemplation, or a lot of thoughts, I guess, come up around that these days. But where I feel like maybe I didn't follow my intuition or something like that. Like the kind of afterwards, you're like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that, and of course, how do I know that, that's just a thought in the moment but anyway, I don't know. Do you have anything? Does that bring up anything for anybody?
All right, you've had your chance. I'll jump in. It is a tricky one. So you're right. If manipulation happens, or what we might describe as manipulation, if that happens, that is just a happening that's arisen. But there may well be, but because of that sentence that I said, because of that seed that got planted, it may well be that if manipulation starts to happen or is about to happen, that a thought will also jump up that says, this is not necessary.
Okay. Yeah, that response. Okay.
Mm.
I gotcha. Because, yeah, I often think of things as just kind of a constant call and response. Something happens, and then there's a response to that, and then just kind of endlessly. That's.
And so if the thought jumps up, oh, you did manipulate that, right, and it's already done, then I would like to see another thought jump up that says, don't judge yourself for that. Don't have an opinion about it. It's something that happened, right? And let's add a story to it, that the recognition of that might be a learning response that makes it less likely to happen again. All possibilities, just possibilities. But you can see, when we're playing with fairly subtle stuff here, so you can see how there is that invitation to say one is good and one is bad.
Mm.
And what Tammy's saying is there is no difference between them. And the reality is they happen or they don't. So what is the point of having any opinion or judgment about it? But if you do, you do. It is what it is. So let's not have an opinion about our opinion.
Hmm.
But if you do, you do. And that only has about 3 iterations before you crack up laughing at the ridiculousness of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can look at it, go deeper and deeper. So if we, I mean, that word manipulation is it's rather ridiculous, isn't it? So if the happening happens, that what we might describe as manipulation, it's not really manipulation. It's just that a preference emerged. And we tried to push things in the direction of our preference. Or did we just contract away from the opposite?
Is there any sense that things can be pushed in the way of preference? Like say a preference arises and then there is something that you would call manipulation, like, okay, I want this outcome. But I mean, it's going to be what it's going to be, right? Is that your sense of things, or?
That's a tricky one. It's so I feel much more comfortable with it is what it is rather than it's going to be what it's going to be. Even if I say it was what it was, I then become much more attuned to the idea that that's an interpretation. Whereas it is what it is before description kind of avoids, it's more direct experience. So it avoids misinterpretation or interpretation. Whereas it's going to be what it's going to be is full on interpretation. It's very, very subtle stuff we're talking about here.
But yeah, I
Even
very
the
much
word,
relate. Oh, go ahead.
even the word preference is misleading. You're in the trap when you say preference because it implies there's some type of choice there. So the
Right.
mere word belies the trap.
Okay.
It's like Vince is saying, it happens, and thoughts about it may happen, but the idea of chooser just sneaks in there on that word preference,
Yeah.
and the word and chooser is just another idea. It's another trap. Language, everything, everywhere you look in language, it's trap, trap, trap. It brings you back into selfing.
Yeah, that's what I've been noticing a lot lately, is just where the selfing arises and um how I'm making a story where I notice, when something is disturbing me, that I'm linking, thoughts of, or what memories to what I think is going to be a future outcome, or something like that. But so yeah, just a lot of that these days, just coming back to direct experience over and over and over.
Yeah, planning happens. There's just no planner.
Mm.
So if you look at,
Yeah.
get right down into, look at the idea of a preference, and you can see that you've got 2 stories, and one story's more attractive than the other story. but it's a story. Now, if you don't recognize that it's a story, you can fall into the trap of thinking that it's possible to move in that direction. But the moment you go, oh, this is just a story, you abandon any attempt to move in that direction, so the illusion of doing doesn't get activated. But while it's a story and you're not recognizing it as a story, the illusion of doing has some credibility, apparent credibility, and it may activate energy as well.
So, like, if you have two choices directly in front of you at the moment, like, is it a story that there's someone who could choose
Well,
what's on the right,
if you
on the
have
left
the
hand?
story that you've got two choices, that rests on the fundamental belief that there is a person that can choose.
Okay.
So if you turn those two stories into, instead of being stories of choice, if you turn those two stories into that's a possibility or that's a possibility,
And one or the other will happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe a third one that you didn't even think of.
Yeah. A lot of times. Yeah.
And as clever as the mind is, it's pretty limited in a lot of ways. Possibilities are, we get surprised all the time what life turns up for us. The stories are insidious. They're so common and they happen so naturally, so easily, naturally, that we kind of mistake them for the fabric of reality, when in fact they're pure generated fantasy all the time. I come up with different things with this one, but one of the things that I imagine is that the difference between somebody who's not awake and somebody who's awake, and this is simplistic, is that the person who's awake recognizes stories when they happen. Because they'll keep happening even after awakening. Stories still there and they still get responded to, but they're recognized as stories. But I could come up with half a dozen different stories that say the same kind of thing. The difference between being awake and not awake is a whole lot of other things too, but that's a good one. Of course, one of the stories about being awake is that being awake is a story.
I think one thing that I notice a lot that I like to pay attention to is when there's a lot of stories and I get real tempted, or even if I'm hooked for a minute, um, just seeing what the body's doing and then watching, and then the story overlay is so weird because it does not match at all what the body is doing. And it's just like, okay, well, this is what's happening. And there's another thing going on here, but it's like it just never matches. Say walking the dog, for instance, and then thinking about whatever possibilities of shall I go eat here, or not even thinking about it, but just having all this stuff going on. And then even if you're not in thought, just watching the body walk and then having the stories go whatever, it's like we're driving a car, you're driving and then everything's coming at you. And then there's like all these little stories along the way. And it's just so interesting just to bring it back to like look at what it's actual, like the visual field helps me, or I'm attracted to it, or I don't know what it does, but it's there. I just notice like even now I see a lap and arms. I'm staring at a screen. And then, well, there's not stories going on right now, but maybe in the past there were. It's just fun to bring it back to that and then see what the body's actually doing versus what stories are, thinking about your shopping list or this and that while you're totally doing something else. Just find that fascinating.
Yeah, the walking's really weird because I'm like a daily walker, and I notice much more now how walking just happens. Like, and you're not like walking off the sidewalk or walking, it's like there's no lack of capacity to continue on your walk despite not necessarily being engaged in the walk at all a lot of the time. Like you said, sometimes you're mentally off somewhere totally else, but yet the body just keeps walking and moving different directions and whatever. Yeah.
And
I
the book,
remember like used to think about that whenever you'd drive and then you'd go, this is when I was way in the like years ago, you would notice anyways when you're driving and then suddenly you wouldn't even remember like the road. You're like, wow, how did I didn't even, and now it's easy to see how that happens. It's like, oh, well, yeah, because you're not doing it.
Mhm.
and I wanted to say or introduce a possibility of something else here, that you're walking and you're not in your head, and the body is noticing stuff that you would normally just pass over if you were in your head. And that's where the magic is. That stuff that the body is noticing just opens up this sense of awe about, wow, just wow, look at that. It's and even if your mind goes, that's, you're looking at a leaf on a tree, look at the way it hangs, or look at that dog shit on the path in front of me. Isn't that amazing? Just the way it formed. That kind of thing that just is something that most people miss out on altogether, simply because they're so busy in their head.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah, because even this morning, like I usually listen to something while I'm walking, but this morning I walked without headphones. And because I used to always think that walking was boring if you didn't have something to listen to.
Yeah.
And today I was like, this is not boring at all. Like they're like just the birds and the bugs and the people and just there's like always something
Yeah.
to catch attention. Yeah.
Oh, the sounds. Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
Celine. Then when you're out, that's another thing is just orienting to sound.
Yep, that's my favorite.
Because I've sounds that used to bother me. I noticed that and I was like, okay, what's so irritating about this sound? It's just a sound. So
Mhm.
I learned to like just listen to pure sound without the stories, like of a motorcycle revving by that used to annoy me when I lived by the road. And I just would stop the story and just listen to the sound, and it's just like, "Rrr," it's so cool. So yeah, you should do that. I invite you to do that, just sound and be with the
Yeah,
sound.
yeah, I do like to do that, especially like when I do natural meditation. That's probably where I most get focused is on sound. But I did notice a couple of weeks ago, I was walking in an area where there's some new construction. And so there's like, trucks going by and stuff early in the morning. And usually that would really bother me a lot. And I didn't have my earbuds in. Um, And then I noticed like how strange it was that, because usually I would hear as soon as I heard the sounds, like I would be like, oh, I got to put my earbuds in. But like I'm just listening to all these sounds and these trucks going by, and it's not like it's not bothering me at all.
Yeah, it's so fun not to let stuff like that bother you. It's just something else just to let go of, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a great story here. It happened really within weeks after I woke up, but I was in a caravan down in Melbourne in my sister-in-law's backyard, front yard, and I woke up in the morning and I'm hearing the sound of the surf and I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is just so lovely. I'm just hearing the waves coming up on the beach and it was a really, really nice feeling. And then as I woke up more, I realized, hang on, I can't possibly be hearing the surf. I'm way too far away from the coast. What I'm actually hearing is the sound of the traffic getting going on the freeway about a kilometre away. And it went from feeling really good when it was the sound of the surf to being really annoyed about the sound of the traffic on the freeway. And then the realization of, isn't it amazing how a story changes what I feel about something? Ah, that was a classic example. That was brilliant. So I invite you, when you hear the sound of the bird and you think, oh, that's a bird, dismiss that and listen to the sound without the label. And it has a different quality. Oh wow, it's a real opener. Yeah. And you can imagine people who don't know about this stuff, who all day are annoyed about what they what's coming in their senses because of the stories that they put on it. You know, the sound of construction is a horrible sound. The sound of the breeze in the trees is lovely. The sound of traffic is horrible. The sound of birds tweeting is wonderful, etc.
Yeah, some people don't even hear the birds. That amazes me.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, because I just remember some years ago, you know, asking about that. Oh, did you hear that bird noise? What kind of bird was that? And they're like, huh? Well, I didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. And I'm like, how do they not hear the birds? Yeah.
The noise of their thoughts was too loud.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad.
I find it hard to kind of have conversation with people without paying attention to this mind chatter or just like having these preferences. Because it's usually like the thing that you're talking with other people are about these, do you like this or don't like that, or what's your opinion or what's your preference? And whenever I say kind of it doesn't matter really, I don't have a preference, or just like all options are good, it seems kind of a resignation. They say like you don't care, or just like you should have an opinion, or it's interpreted as that.
Yep. You are in a, a, a place, quote quote, you are in a place that where you will are going to need to develop a new skill of learning how to communicate with people when all they want to talk about is crap.
Mhm.
But you'll get it.
I've
And
never like that this whole life. I've never mostly like I've hated small talk, and then now I think I know why.
well, so here's what comes to mind here. What I don't listen to their words. I hear the words, but I don't listen to their words. I listen to what's behind them. I listen to what feeling they're expressing with their words, and here the trick is then is not to judge what I imagine they're feeling, but rather to find out. I'm just curious. I'm always curious. I want to know more. Where did that come from? What is really going on? And that makes I can talk. I could talk to the. How can I put it? Crudely, I might say I could talk to the dullest person and be absolutely entranced about their internal experience. And so I want to ask them, what, tell me more, tell me more. I want to hear more, and I might direct or not direct. I don't do it consciously as such, but I might direct their thing, what they're trying to describe into something that's underneath what they're trying to describe rather than get lost in the content of what they're saying. And it's everybody's interesting. It's amazing how interesting people are. But if you judge that what they're saying is boring or whatever, then you use a lot of energy and you'll find yourself exhausted really quickly. And then you'll want to extract yourself from the situation.
Yeah, I like if if I'm yeah, I do when I talk to some people, I do try to like stay as present as possible and just kind of be there. But yeah, that's something that's currently being explored and
Yeah,
expanded on.
yeah. So what was missing in what I just said was the constant awareness of what that triggers in me, what they say.
Yeah.
And it's not a conscious manipulation thing. It doesn't. It's just the way it happens now. I don't know whether maybe it once was a bit conscious, but I don't find it onerous to talk to anybody these days. It just happens. But also, I laugh. I got accused the other day of being super serious, and I just couldn't believe that. I just thought that was the funniest thing I've heard in a long time. But and then I recognised that what it was that frequently I just say nothing. I'm just sitting there, in it with a impassionate look, I suppose. I'm just not connected with the rubbish that's going on. So here you go. I've judged it as rubbish, but it doesn't. I don't need to get involved in that. So I'm just sitting there, quite happy, quite relaxed in myself, and then other people judge me as being something, yeah, which is somewhat amusing. Mm. But it is a new world, Shafigh, totally new world. How you relate to people. Mm.
I've found though, like over the last several years, that some people though have just kind of dropped away out of my life, and then other people have appeared that are into this, and I'm not a very social person, so it's really been a surprise to me, especially since I moved back to where I am, and it's a very conservative area. It's just kind of amazed me how my community has just kind of popped up out of nowhere. So
Yep. Yep. It's easier to have a story about we attract certain people, we attract certain things depending on how we are. It's a great story. I love it. That's why all you people are in my life. It's great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm surrounded by, I mean, this appears to me to be a very conservative area, and I'm surrounded by people who have quite different views of the world than I do. And I could focus on their political views and say, well, they're all stupid, which they are in their ideas of the world. So there's a judgment. I see it happening. Yet they're all big-hearted people who would give you the shirt off their back if they felt that you needed it. If you were their friend, they would do anything for you. And yet they're racist and they don't like immigration and all this kind of stuff, crazy stuff. Yeah. Yet they're good people. At the same time, there you go. There's another one where they could be good and bad at the same time. Yeah.
looks like there's more of a compassion for the fact. I mean, it's fear that brings about those viewpoints anyway. So then
Absolutely.
they're
Yes.
kind of more compassion for the fact that they're living in fear.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah, and they can't help it, of course. That's the way they've been conditioned. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, when we judge something, we reduce it to a simplistic level, and it's never accurate. Hmm.
I want to ask a follow-up question to where I am. So the whole figuring things out is just a story.
Yeah.
There is no figuring things out. There is no what is thinking then? Because before all my definition of course there's no absolute or correct definition, but my definition of thinking was this mind chatter, this mind noise. That was my definition of thinking when people are saying the thoughts are this and that or the thinking happened. I imagine this is what they're talking about. Maybe they are talking about this. So, and also I heard you talking that thoughts become useful at some point. They are not rubbish all the time.
Yep. Yep.
So it makes me wonder, okay, what is thinking? What is thought? What's the role of them? Do you ever become aware of them, the thought, or just things happen?
Thinking happens in another language. True thinking. It's a series of neural electrical processes and it happens thousands of times a second. And it only gets sent to the speech center. Talking in your head is talking in your head, not thinking. Decisions are made quietly. Those are announcements that you're calling thinking. They don't know anything. The knowing is somewhere else. You just think about it in terms of language. Talking in the head is just announcements. Thinking has its own language, but it's not English or Spanish or French or anything else.
Hmm. Okay.
Two languages in there, not just one. If you want to hear yourself thinking, put on an EEG cap and turn up the audio. It'll go. That's you thinking.
But to your question about when they become useful, it's the self-referential thoughts that lead us astray in the beginning. After we've broken the compulsion to obey or the compulsion to believe they're true, after that's broken, those thoughts will recede into the background a lot. Right? Eventually, like in the beginning, they're a bit louder and a bit more. They demand attention still, and so on. But they'll fade. They'll just move into the background, and they'll kind of be there, but you won't even know what they're about. They'll right. Then you start to recognize that thoughts can be. This is a story. Thoughts can be an expression of what your intuition recognizes. And so they're much more subtle. And those thoughts will appear to you not as a statement of fact, but rather as a possibility. So they're just there to be considered. Right? So you could almost anyway, don't just recognize that they'll start to have a different appearance about them. And going forward, which is a little bit jumping ahead here, it's what you imagine becomes your reality. And so now we're not talking about verbal thoughts. Now we're talking about maybe images or even more subtle stuff than that. And so it's like there is a head in which these things appear. And that's a story. But it's what we experience. And that we imagine that what we're seeing is something out there. But they're actually a thought-generated image. And we can imagine easily that what we interpret that to be is our view of the world. But then you can go the next step and you start to realize that what you imagine is out there is what you create as the world. So this is really jumping ahead a bit, but so there's no end to, so it's all stories. All the way down, it's stories, nothing but stories. There is nothing actual other than stories and how you respond to them. But don't worry about that. That's just, I'm just saying that for you as a future possibility kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can look at differentiating the talking head from the images Vince is talking about because they're two different areas. The talking head is over here in the speech center. The verbal stuff, I mean, the images, that's all the way actually in the back. And mental images are, if you're designing a skyscraper, those mental images are a form of processing. It is actual part of thinking. Whereas, distinguish again, the verbal speech part is not thinking. It doesn't know anything. It's just announcements. So yeah, it's good to differentiate the verbal announcements, which are just announcements. It's not thinking, but the images are part of a process of actual thinking. And even the word thinking draws you back into the trap.
Mm.
Processing is probably a better word for it.
Yeah. Because you're curious, just observe during the day and you'll see that what triggers you to have a drink of water, for example, you used to think that just happened, that there's just a drinking of water. But what you'll see, if you're really sensitive, is that you'll see that you'll recognize that you saw a glass on the sink, or you saw somebody else have a drink, and that happened in a flash, and that stimulated for you the idea to have a drink. You know, there was a precursor to what you did that was a little movie that played somewhere in a really subtle way that you didn't, most of the time you wouldn't even realize was there, but you'll start to notice them now simply because we're talking about it. You watch, you'll see that, and you'll see that even when you're going to get up out of that chair, that you'll run the idea of doing it before you do it. So here's one that got me years ago. You know, all you guys who've got cats, right? The cat jumps out the window, right? When it's standing there before it jumps out the window, does it imagine itself jumping out the window before it actually does it? I don't know the answer to that, but it's a really good mind game to play. Does the cat imagine itself doing it before it does it?
So I've noticed what you're talking about, like the little image beforehand, but not all of those get action.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Yep.
Because I've noticed it a lot of times where I'm like, I can't tell because I will imagine like the whole like going to go get a coffee, say, and then and I do see that, attention will kind of like, ooh, just see the whole thing there, but then sometimes it doesn't, the body doesn't go. And so like, yeah, I'm trying to develop intuition, not develop, but I'm trying to like the intuition thing, I'm trying. That sounds like I'm actually doing something, but I'm not really. But that is something that's
Yep.
very right now. I don't know how to say it, but it's
It develops.
maybe
It develops. You get more and more sensitive to that. Yes.
yeah, I'm trying to become more aware of that, but I guess maybe I am trying, but it doesn't feel like I'm trying.
Mm.
I
When you
guess
see
just learning.
images, when you see images that come and go, and some may happen and some may not, that's the process of prioritization
Uh-huh.
happening automatically is is what you're noticing. Prioritization happens, it's almost in the optimal survival program, I'll call it for lack of a better word, which is that stuff just noticing that things may not happen. You're noticing that things get sorted out very, 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 very quickly.
Yeah, and sometimes it's up, you're at the stop sign, and next thing you know, you don't know, and then you just turn right instead of going left toward the coffee shop.
Right.
Mm.
Thought you were going to go there, but you didn't. I mean, it just, yeah, okay. It's all very interesting. I don't know. When you're not taking it so serious, it gets really interesting.
It is like, yeah, it is interesting because it's like life becomes an adventure. What's going to happen next? Who knows? Yeah.
What people can't, because of the fact that thinking happens or talking in the head happens so slowly, it escapes them that hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of things are happening and sorting themselves out every second. You're trapped by the, the, the talking head in a sense, and you're just not letting that you're not seeing the innate wisdom controlling everything, which it does.
amazing to notice how many times this happens, this attention going to the mind chatter, and just like whenever I become idle, not doing anything, it just like goes there, and then I catch myself, find myself like doing that. Just like a habit that is just the default mode in a way.
Habit, what it is. It gradually unwinds. It has a momentum like any habit, but it gradually, it's like a car. If a wheel comes off, it still has its own momentum that it has to slowly dissipate, but it does. Once it's detached, it's detached. No going back, really.
I like that. The metaphor, the mind slowing down is like the wheel coming off the car. That was a good one.
I picture it bouncing off and hitting rocks and everything. Ow.
So when there was silence a moment ago, this here, that what I experienced here was the idea popped up that how noisy is silence. There was so much going on all the time, even though there was no talking happening at the moment. So what I called silence wasn't silence at all. In fact, the thought said that there's no such thing as silence. But there was a wonderful relaxation. There was like almost a meditative state came over this body in that. And looking back, there were thoughts did happen, but I couldn't tell you what they were about. They were just there in the background kind of thing, a long way away. Although I do recognise there was that thought about how noisy silence is. That appeared as a thought. And the realization of the relaxation in the body didn't appear as a thought, but it was there. That's a trickier one, yeah. So it's just like, there's this wonderful adventure to be had at any moment in any place, just by turning on the switch, maybe. I don't know how to put it. Yeah.
A lot more to explore when it's just not all thought, because there's so many different sensations, sound, just energy, feeling. The attention goes wherever it goes. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And the idea popped up to me just a few seconds ago about my tinnitus, and then I could hear it again. But I then remembered that when it was silent, I wasn't hearing my tinnitus because I wasn't focused on that. It didn't exist. But it was likely part of the noisiness of silence. I don't know. But the noise of silence wasn't really noise. It wasn't an audible input. It was just an activity of some kind.
Now I'm hearing my tinnitus again.
Yes, sorry about that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. I don't find mine annoying when I do hear it. It's not annoying. It's just there, and I know
Just
it
there.
won't be there in a minute. Yeah. Now, it's a classic example of how attention creates reality. Not just the perception of reality, but the actual reality. It brings into being an experience.
Yeah, good example.
How would you guys fill your days without thinking, without going into mind?
I have no idea.
It's just like, to me, it's just, there's nothing to do. What you guys do? I think 80% of my time was just in my mind. Now I don't know what to do.
It'll happen.
Yeah, it hasn't left a void for me. There's no emptiness of something. It's life is very busy here. Not overwhelmingly busy, but there is no space for where nothing lives.
That's kind of my question too, is how, like, is there a way to distinguish between different types of thoughts? You know what I
Well, the
mean?
voice in your head is announcements. Just think of it as that.
I mean, I
Now,
feel like
thinking,
I'm always having voices in my head.
yeah,
Like it's always a voice in my head.
yeah. So what is, how important is that? Everything happens whether that voice is rattling on about one thing or another.
I know, but it doesn't. I- There is. I don't see that. Like there is still that ownership of the mind to say, I'm doing this.
Hmm. So
Like I'm,
this becomes unimportant. It's that sense of ownership that is where the value is for you. So before you said that, I wanted to ask you, what is your relationship to those thoughts? But you told me you own them. That's identification. That rests on a belief that there is a self there to be able to own them. Now, that's not wrong. That's an opportunity for you to see the relationship to those thoughts.
I mean,
So,
I recognize I'm not my thoughts.
yeah, yeah.
I recognize I'm not my thoughts, but I'm, I don't see how,
No, you don't recognize that you're not your thoughts. You think that you're not your thoughts. That's just another thought announcing something. If you
Mhm.
recognized it, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. So recognizing is a discovery, and you haven't yet discovered that. But you're very close to discovering that when you think that you're not your thoughts. And when you think it in such a way that it has power. You believe it. Yet part of you doesn't believe it. Part of you says, they are my thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's just another thought. So why does that thought have any authority? They are my thoughts. Does that thought have some kind of authority? Is it a judge? Does it know something? Does that thought think?
No.
So why is it believed?
I think because there's nowhere else that it seems like it's coming from. Like it's,
What is the word my actually attached to? My thoughts. Is there an actual inexperienced attachment between the word my and thoughts?
well, it feels like they exist in this, like thoughts exist in this place that a me inhabits, or at least a part of me inhabits.
Oh, we're not talking about location, we're talking about identification. What about the word my is so special that it connects to thoughts? Does the word my own thoughts?
Mm, no,
So my thoughts is just another thought, isn't it?
yes. It's trying to attach like a location of where they seem to. So I guess I can. I don't think I create them. So there's not the ownership that I created the thoughts, but they seem to appear here. Yeah, I don't know. It's
Thought says they seem to appear here. Look, they seem to appear here is just another way of saying my, a clever way of getting around my. Oh, there's no my. Oh, what they seem to appear here. You're you're claiming them through the back door.
clever like that, I guess.
Hmm.
You're saying my head. They appear in my head. Do you own that head? You own that body. What is ownership?
There still is just a sense of a consciousness residing in this body.
Oh, well, that's a bullshit story, isn't
It's the only one I
A
got.
sense, you mean a sensation? There are sensations.
it? Yeah.
Are they my sensations? You feel the chair, feel air moving, sensations happen. Are they your sensations? Are they just sensations?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're just sensations. I mean, I know there's not an I, but I don't, but there's still a disconnect.
No, you don't know that there's not an I yet.
Well, I thought I had an experience that there's not an I, but I guess it's back.
Yeah. So that chair you're sitting in, it's at a normal level, we could say that's your chair. But if we examine what is your chair, how do you own that chair? What says you own it other than maybe the receipt you've got from the cashier when you bought it, right? There is ownership is just an idea, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, it's an idea that has legs in society, but it's just an idea. There is no physical connection between you and that chair, between your body and that chair. There's no chain tied to the chair and you that says it's yours. Just as the same thing with that body, with that head. So can you recognize, would it be more accurate to say this head rather than my head? Can you see the difference between those two? What does one feel like? Does it resonate for you that it's more accurate to say this head than to say my head? Is one more accurate than the other, do you think? This head
Yeah.
talks about a head that's there, right? My head talks about that same story about my chair. It's just a story.
I guess then where it gets confused is where am I then?
What do you mean, where are you? Where's that crazy question come from? You're there, wherever that is. Just like I'm here, you're there. That's it.
There is a body. Is it my body? Where is my inexperience? There's a body inexperience. Where is my inexperience other than a
Is
little
there
word floating around?
is there any consciousness that exists somewhere?
Don't divert.
You could say there's consciousness. Is it your consciousness?
Oh, well, I don't know.
That's a good answer. I like that.
That's a good answer.
Mm. So it's accurate to say those thoughts appear. But if you say they're my thoughts, you've introduced that story about ownership again. And it is only a story, isn't it? Is it clear to you that that's just a story?
Yeah.
And it's a way of speaking that's quite normal in our society to say my thoughts. But in a reflection of what is actual is there are thoughts. We don't need
Well,
a story to say they're my thoughts.
yeah. I mean, I'm definitely noticing now, though, too, when like uncomfortable sensations arise, I will notice either a story that created them or a story that wants to attach to them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely now the ability to be able to recognize that that's just a habit of those two things connecting.
Yes, great.
So now,
That's big, yeah.
so now I'm just allowing the sensations to come up and finding it interesting of like, oh yeah, look how it wants to say this is a fear of such and such and whatever. And then
So if we go back a step, it's easy for you to see that they are just sensations that appear, right? And then you can jump off and chase down what reasoning might be behind them and so on with stories, but they're just sensations that appear. You can accept that one easily. And I suspect that now you can accept that they're just thoughts that appear. So you may still get a sense of them belonging to you. If you get lost in story, which is always about a logical conclusion, that because they're happening in that head and not this head, they belong to you. It's just a bullshit story. Well, let's not even go there. They're
so what
thoughts that happen.
I guess I'm curious about what starts happening though, where you can see more clearly like different thoughts that are, I don't know, maybe helpful as opposed to just bullshit talking of about things.
I'd say at this point, it's probably valuable for you to say there are not going to be any helpful thoughts.
That's what I'm already concluding.
There will be, but not until you break that connection, till you have that shift that recognizes that thoughts are just an afterplay, an after shadow of what happens. Once you get that, once you recognize that, then whether thoughts are useful or not will be much more apparent to you. But right at the moment, it's a good staging point to say they're all crap. None of them are worth noticing or worth attending to or engaging with. Yeah.
Try to
I
look
mean,
at thoughts as objects rather than thought. Your thoughts implies that you see thoughts as subjective. They're my thoughts. That these thoughts are the subject of every sentence and the subject of reality. Thoughts are arisings, just as you're aware of sensation in the body, you're aware of the wall, you're aware of the ceiling. Thoughts are arisings, objects, just like any other object. They come and go. They're they may seem personal, but that's just another story about thoughts. If you stop seeing thoughts as the subject, these are me, and see them as, oh, just things coming and going, they can lose some of that appeal.
yeah, I mean, I sense there's things that I have seen that are like breadcrumbs and like, oh yeah, I noticed that I noticed that I noticed that.
Yeah. I suspect there are a whole lot of links in that chain that are broken, and we just need to give it a little tug and it'll fall apart. And I
Yeah,
suspect right at
there's
that point, yeah.
yeah, there's still something that is like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the fact that you now recognize that stories, that ownership is a story, might be just what's required to do that.
okay.
You might also notice that these personal pronouns, I, me, and my, are many times associated with what you would call a pleasant feeling. My thoughts, well, in a way that feels good. You're running home to home base because you're venturing out into no man's land when you start saying thoughts aren't really my thoughts. And you want to run home to mama, so to speak. Oh, that really feels good. Those are my thoughts. But notice that what you call a pleasant sensation that's attached to that thought doesn't make it true.
Yeah, I think there is like some still grasping on to, yeah, it feels like I come out of prison and then like go back in, come out a little bit and then go back in.
Yeah. And the analogy that or a metaphor that you could use there is that it feels safe in that prison, and out
Yeah.
there is a bit scary.
Yeah. Yeah, because I do think there's a sense of how can this thing exist in this world without thoughts or without like the thoughts are what it seems to have allowed it to survive.
Absolutely. Yep, yep, yep. And that's a discovery. And that's a discovery most people have never even got close to. Look at Shafigh nodding. He knows. He's just had an experience that knows they just happen, and survival happens really easily without them. But we've been brainwashed to think that we need them for survival.
Another thing to notice is when you say thoughts needed for survival, there's still that subtle belief in there that a thought is causing something to happen, like, oh, I want a drink of water. But notice that it was the thirst urge that caused the thought, I want a drink of water. So really, in a sense, just a sensation caused the getting of water. The thought was superfluous. Thoughts are generally superfluous. They're announcements.
Mhm.
So you can imagine, Michelle, that you're in a new land on an adventure of discovery. And it will happen or not. Doesn't take any intention or effort for it to happen. It just will happen or not. If it doesn't, well, we'll plant some more seeds and wait for them to germinate. It will happen. It can't not. It will happen because you're on this path. And once you're on this path, you can't get off it. Okay, well, I'm going to go and cook breakfast for my wife now. Just while I'm here, though, I'd just like to mention that next week we will be an hour earlier than today. So let me know if that's a problem for you. Let me know. I can if I get enough, I can move them forward an hour or back an hour or whichever way it is to make up for it. But you guys, a lot of you have just gone into summertime, and next Sunday we'll be going out of summertime. So that means that
Or your time's changing.
yeah, my changing next Sunday. Yeah,
Yeah.
Wait, you said you're going forward or back?
no, we're going back. You just
It'll
went.
be 2 o'clock in the States.
They go
So
back. We
I
go
think it
forward.
puts us the opposite direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
You,
it'll
you went
oh,
forward, and then we'll go back. So it'll be the same time for you as it was last week before you went forward. But see,
No,
It'll
no, all
be
right,
later for us.
right,
It's going to be, yeah.
yeah.
it's going to be an hour later for us,
Oh, it'll
even
be 4 in the States?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I get
yeah,
really
you're
screwed up on this whole time thing. I
Oh,
wish
so
they'd quit it.
does all of our heads in, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
4 Central Time. Yeah.
I'm,
okay.
I'm 77 years old. I've been going through this forever and ever, and yet I still can't work out whether I go forward or backwards. But yeah, no, I remember we're going backwards. The clock will be going back an hour. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that was good. It was much more subtle than what we usually cope with, but it was good. Thank you. Yeah.